All right, Micah, here we go from down the line. So, a lot of great stuff going on in your swing. Posture looks better. You know, you're not hunched over and you're not sitting back in the heels as much. So, let's take a look here. Great looking position here where notice your head, it's going down. Your hips are staying back. I mean, the club head is just marginally outside of the hands. I would call that pretty much perfecto. So you look at this and you go, wow, you know, the shin is in a great spot. There's really not much I can critique yet. The only thing I would say as we get closer to P3 is your right arm has a little bit excess of flex to it. So just creating, you know, part of this goes hand in hand with width, but if you keep your right arm a little bit straighter, I think that will help. But I mean, you look at this, you're on plane, you're looking good. But here's what I wanted to point out per our discussion there in the Facebook Messenger. So your transition, what I'm seeing, let's pause you at the top. So the right arm is just a little bit behind you. The hands are at a decent height. So watch this move here. So the hands are working out over the top, which I want to be crystal clear is not within itself a bad thing, as I'll prove later in this lesson. But what's happening is you're coming out with the hands, and at P5 right here, if you look, if we were to draw a line, you know, straight down towards the ground, you're actually a little bit vertical of the plane. So what I'd love to see in transition is for the club head to go that way. And by P5, see how your right elbow and your left elbow are even? What you will find if you look at Tiger Woods when he worked with Hank Haney, if you look at Tony Finau currently, if you look at Brooks Koepka currently, you will see the right elbow lower than the left elbow at P5. And what that will do is it will shallow out the plane. So I talked about, you know, it's great that the club head is coming in the vicinity of the hands here, but we really would love to see that shaft leaning back more that way. So when you're coming down, and this is why I kind of guessed that your misses might be high and to the right. You're coming a little bit steep, and that ball's taking off a little bit this way. So the club face might be a little bit open. So it's kind of hard to see, but the club face is aimed like here. All right, so that transition we're going to get into some drills, and you know we'll talk about that more. Let me remove a lot of these lines here so it's not so much too overwhelming here. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. But, you know, regarding the angle at the ankle joint, you're doing a great job from this view. Now, let's take a look here at one other thing. Now, this is something I mentioned before, and we'll take a look at some other really good players, but what I would recommend is doing some once we work on this transition with some drills, what I would recommend is trying to keep this right foot planted longer so that it's thrusting this way. So right about here, see how your right foot is lifting up? I'd like to keep that down on the ground as you open up the hips. And I might add, you're doing a phenomenal job of rotating and opening up the hips a lot better than you previously did. All right, so let's shift over and look at an example here. All right, so here's Lucas Glover. If you don't know who Lucas Glover is, he won the U.S. Open in 2009. Of course, we'll look at Ben Hogan in this lesson as well, who, as we know, won 9 majors. But check out this swing. So this is one of the key moves I wanted to talk about. And before we get to it, though, we can see how nicely you're doing in the takeaway. If we pause him around P2, The club head is just a little bit outside the hands. The head's going down. All great stuff. His hips are going to be a little bit deeper than yours, but, again, your takeaway is awesome from the down the line view, much like Lucas here. Now, again, just a little bit of, my input. If you can keep that right arm a little bit straighter like this, when the club head is somewhere around the time the club head is hitting your hands. But the main thing to point out, in addition to the steep shoulder turn, the angle at the ankle joint, all stuff we've reviewed here, the head's continuing to go down. But watch what happens. Here's the shaft, right? Slightly vertical of the plane line, and aiming it right at the plane line like you had it is fine too. But watch what happens in transition. So let's just play this a couple of times. It's very interesting. Very Hogan-esque. So what he's doing is a couple things. So number one, the path of the hands, and I'm not saying you have to copy Lucas exactly, but this is, you'll find that golf instructors will debate over this. So I would argue that this is in a way over the top, because the hands went from here to here to here. And if we were to draw that out, right, there was like a loop. But the most important part is that the club head is kicking that way, right? So let's watch this again. So he's shallowing the club in transition. And let's remove some of these lines so it doesn't get too distorted. All right, so just waiting for this thing to reload here. Okay, so here we go again. This move right here where the club kicks that way, the right elbow is going to squeeze in front of the body. So by the time he's at P5, this is a very important checkpoint on your camera. At P5, when his left arm is parallel to the ground, his right elbow is lower than the left elbow. And if we look at where the shaft is, it's parallel to the original plane line. It's maybe a degree or two even shallower than the plane line. So the shaft, again, that's aimed, out above the ball. So by the time he's coming down, there's that classic position where it's situated nicely on the right forearm, whereas with you, the shaft is coming down more up here. And then just to highlight this, just like Anthony Kim, check out how quiet this right foot is going through the ball. But he's still thrusting with the hips, and he's really going to open up that lower body. So it's not like he's not transferring his weight, but the advantage of keeping that right foot down is you're not going to have the tendency to shoot the right leg way out here. It's not going to get in the way of the right elbow getting in front of the body. So there's that right foot. Phenomenal stuff here going on with how he's clearing the hips. And notice the head here again is lower. A lot of tilt. Alright, so here's a drill that you might like. Now this is not the traditional wall drill for keeping the hips back. This is very different. You can see I have the club flipped upside down so that the grip is down. And you can do this indoors. It won't damage the wall. You can do this outside against the shed. But watch what I do here. So I'm taking the club back, and I'm going to pause at the top. And this grip end in transition, I'm going to drag this thing down against the wall and really exaggerate this move. So check out at P5, left arm is parallel. Look where this right elbow is. And notice my hips went way, way back. Again, I'm overdoing this to try and demonstrate the move. So again, this is a combination of the shoulder externally rotating, and then there's what we would call supination. So I don't mean to throw too many anatomical terms at you, but getting that, knowing you're getting a lot better, we have to start to get a little more picky and technical. So the idea, though, is just this. The drill itself isn't all that tough, right? I'm just dragging this club against the wall, the grip end. And by doing that, we can see as it come down. So this is on the right forearm. I'm even overdoing it. I mean, this club is aimed really shallow. All right. And the hips are way back. And my head went down like 1.5 feet, right? So you're not going to ever see that with a real swing. But let me remove some of these lines, and then I can kind of talk about what I meant by supination. So supination, just for the sake of demonstration here, let's let this reload. All right, so this is a take 2 here. All right, so supination would be the act of the forearm rotating that way. Now, if you play around with this, Micah, if you supinate it, you'll get that club to kick that way, right? So that's a key part of the equation. Supination and also some external rotation in the shoulder joint. And again, the elbow will squeeze in and we'll really flatten that thing out and stretch our imagination, because that's what's required if you ever want to make a change in the game of golf. So there's the grip. And right here it's on the hands, which is what we're looking for, right in that area. All right. So let's continue with a few more examples and then look at you from the face-on view. All right, so here's our Ben Hogan example. Same thing. Again, the key here is consistency with a lot of the conventional models. So camera's moving around, but all right, here we go. So relatively steep turn, maybe not quite as much as Lucas Glover, but phenomenal bend at the waist. The hips have gone back. Now here's that move, though. So he's a little bit different because, you might call this a little bit laid off, but in the transition, see how he laid it off even more? So again, he's supinating the hell out of that right forearm, and he's what we would call pronating his left forearm. Supination and pronation are the opposite. And again, this is why we would call this a sidearm throw, because that right elbow is driving inward, which is similar to if you had a baseball and you threw like a submarine pitch, right? Like an underhand sidearm or even a submarine pitch. This is the idea here. So the club head, even though this is footage from 1953, the club head is kicking that way, right? Yep, definitely is. And the hands are going to work that way. And then another example of that right foot staying down so that the hips, are thrusting off to the side and the right leg isn't shooting too far out this way. So the right foot would be kind of quiet, even though he's obviously transferring his weight and opening up the body like crazy. I mean, this is awesome. Hips are nice and open. Again, the head is lower. So again, we've looked at, Hogan won the U.S. Open. He's won a lot of majors, 9 as a matter of fact. So we just looked at 2 different guys who won the U.S. Open, and we can see already some similarities. All right, so here you are from face on. Nice looking setup. Stance is maybe just a little bit wide, but all in all, nice job. All right, so the main thing here, again, great job with the takeaway, nice extension and all that. I can tell you've been really working hard on the lower body stability here, so you're inside of the hip lines. But what I would say is don't be afraid to let your left thigh work in towards your right leg, if that makes sense. So that will help with the idea of loading right and then obviously turning. But again, if you look at your knees, they're pretty darn level, so I can tell you've been putting in the work. I'm guessing you did the left foot up drill. And sure, your head's moved a little bit to the right, but this is 100% fine in my opinion. This isn't like this is an obvious sway or anything. I mean, that's fine. Most players, when they turn back, they're not totally perpendicular to the ground. And what you're doing here is a hell of a lot better than the opposite, where if someone turned like over here, that's stack and tilt territory, so that's not good. So again, just left thigh working in towards the right thigh. And other than that, I mean, this is solid. This transition move we can kind of see, which again, obviously most of the lesson we talked about it, but that right arm, it's a little bit behind you. And then when you go down, we'd love to see that right elbow at this point digging in down here. And then just hanging on to the wrist hinge as much as possible. So that wall drill where you drag the club against the wall will help tremendously. All right, so final clip, Micah. I know it's been a bit of a, I've been rambling a bit, but again, I want you to get your money's worth for one, and secondly, it's so important, especially with online lessons, that you know what you need to do, opposed to me knowing what you need to do. Okay, so same lines here that I just drew on you. We have on Brooks Koepka the head and the sides of the hips. So this is what I was referring to. Watch his left thigh work in towards his right leg. So there's that right load. But despite that, it's not like his head is, excessively bobbing off the ball. This is a very reasonable angle here with the back. It's not like it's a sway. Now, I would say you're doing a better job with the knees. I mean, his knee, though, is sagging down here. So if you could, keep your knee a little more level and then just, again, have that left leg work in and be mint. And then with that transition, so this is what it looks like from the face-on view. This is very Hogan-esque. We're going to see, his right arm is not pulled behind him. So his left and his right arm, right, the arms are what I would call connected here. And in transition, there's that right elbow. It's just going to dig right in front of the rib cage. There it is again. Whereas with you, we can't see that because the right arm is behind you. So you talk about lag. Check this angle out here. And I know it's a really blurred image. And he's going to release the club. I mean, with a 3-wood or a driver, you need loft off the tee. With the irons, what you'll find is the guys will have more of a trailing shaft going into impact to compress the ball. But check out the amount of lateral drive here, especially considering on the way back, there was a slight rock that way. So there's net versus gross. So the gross movement is huge. I mean, if you here to here, that's a massive lateral movement, and then the net movement would be from here to here. But anyway, don't want to overcomplicate things. So hopefully this helps. Sincerely, let me know if you have questions. Happy to answer any. But I think, again, getting against the wall and doing that shallowing drill will continue your golf journey, and you're improving a lot. Nice job. Let me know. All right, thanks.